We're here, folks. We are 1 week away from the start of the NFL's regular season. Before we get to that point, we have one more preseason game to go, the fourth preseason against the Buffalo Bills, your Minnesota Vikings do. And I understand that across all 32 teams across the National Football League, it's pretty much a wash in the sense that we're not expecting the starters to play. That's just how it works. However, it doesn't mean you should just ignore the game. There are still, on all three phases of the ball, there are still things that you should look forward to if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan when it comes to the Vikings versus the Bills game on Thursday. And whether it's from the depth players or project players who are not right now or not expected to be right now, but in the future are expected to be significant contributors to the team. And let's start with the offense. Number one, I want to see Irv Smith Jr. fully unleashed. He's had a nice couple of plays. He's looked very good in the first three preseason games, but I want to see this dude be the primary target, just maybe 4 or 5 catches. And we've seen what he has done at the collegiate level, his dynamicness, his explosiveness, everything that you wish that you would have seen from Kyle Rudolph that we've been begging from this dude his entire career. We have that in Irv Smith Jr., but I just want to see it at the next level. I just want to see him because eventually we did bring back Kyle Rudolph essentially on a year-to-year deal. So whether it's after this season or the season after next, eventually Kyle Rudolph is going to move on. And it's expected that Irv Smith Jr. is going to be his replacement. I just want to know what he can do as the primary tight end at the next level. So that's what I really want to see. Number 2, whether it's B.C. Johnson or Brandon Zylstra, those are the two guys that I'm looking at. I talked about before how the wide receiver 3 position battle has been super disappointing, very underwhelming. But I think when it comes to those two, Zylstra and Johnson, I want to see one of those two dudes have a grand finale against the Buffalo Bills. That way you can at least give one last punching statement to say, I deserve to at least be considered for that wide receiver 3 spot. Otherwise, I mentioned this on my podcast, my personal YouTube channel, Realistic Randy, how I wouldn't even be surprised and I wouldn't even blame the team for that matter if things don't work out this preseason where Johnson, Zylstra, Jeff Badet, Chad Beebe, or whoever the hell else doesn't really show up to really claim and just own that position, the wide receiver 3 spot. I wouldn't even blame the team for going back to Laquan Treadwell as the wide receiver 3 spot, as much as we've made fun of him and he's been a punching bag because as a first round draft pick, he's been a complete bust. But if everybody else is going to be underwhelming at that spot, then at least the dude can block. And when you look at Kyle Rudolph, we already know Kyle Rudolph can't block, but on those plays where you have tight ends next to the offensive line, right next to them, you at least, and especially if it's a running play and you need them to block, at least you can have Laquan Treadwell out there to assist as well. So if one of those dudes, Zylstra and Johnson, can really put their stamp on it on this game, I think that could at least nudge the coaches to say, okay, let's really consider this before we just automatically give it back to Laquan Treadwell. Number 3, Drew Samia. Early on in the preseason, it was like, okay, this guy clearly, he's very raw. He needs to get his technique together. But specifically in that game against the Arizona Cardinals last week, he looked phenomenal. That touchdown run that Mike Boone had in the fourth quarter, Drew Samia played a large part in that touchdown run. Came from the right side off to the left and just mauled, I don't know who the dude was, just absolutely mauled that defensive tackle or whoever that was to give a clear lane for Mike Boone to just run on in. And so think about the Philadelphia Eagles. When I talk about investing in the offensive line, we've talked about this for as long as this podcast, investing in the offensive line. Think about the Eagles. They've got this guy, I think his name is Andre Dillard, who's expected to be the heir apparent replacement to Jason Peters once he goes as left tackle. Now, granted, Jason Peters, he's still pretty good. He's not as good as his Pro Bowl form, his previous Pro Bowl form. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, Jason Peters will. But still, you need to have a backup plan to essentially replace him. You can't just say, well, we're good right now, and we'll figure it out once Jason Peters retires. That's what you need. That's truly investing in the offensive line. And I commend Rick Spielman. albeit it took maybe his job being on the line this year to really feel the pressure of saying, okay, let me really invest in this offensive line. Not just let's get some bodies in the 6th or 7th round that can maybe be a starter eventually on the offensive line. No, Drew Samia, he showed what he's capable of against the Arizona Cardinals. Can he keep building up? I want to see him again against the Buffalo Bills. I'm very excited about him. At one point early on, I said, man, this guy, he might challenge Josh Klein for the starting right guard spot, but that's out the window at this point. And Josh Klein, he's actually been pretty decent during this preseason, so kudos to him. But Drew Samia, he's a project now, but keep building him. Keep really investing in him and spending time with him to where eventually when he's ready to go, we can have him. Keep doing it every year, investing in the offensive line. Never get comfortable. And lastly, on offense, what I'm looking forward to seeing all that valuable experience and all those exceptional practice sessions from Sean Mannion. I'm looking forward to seeing all that translate to not a damn thing on the football field against the Buffalo Bills. It's just funny because when we're talking about Sean Mannion versus Kyle Sloter, people trash Kyle Sloter, and I'm including Phil Mackey, director of Score North. Oh, I'm including you in this too. That we dance around all of, oh, he's got experience, or Kyle Sloter doesn't have experience, but Sean Mannion does, and he's a good film study guy, and he's good in practice, and all that other stuff. And every single which way that we try to bash Kyle Sloter and prop up Sean Mannion, you guys keep dancing around the actual performance on the field. Oh, did you see Sean Mannion? You see Sean Mannion, and the one time that Sean Mannion does actually make plays, we're raving about it. Did you see that touchdown pass against Seattle that Sean Mannion had to Irv Smith Jr.? Way to make up for that pick six he had earlier, I believe the last possession. Oh, so we're really supposed to sit here and praise Sean Mannion because the Seattle Seahawks coverage, their pass defense, just pissed the bed. They were nowhere to be found. They didn't cover anybody. Irv Smith Jr. was wide open. There was no coverage back there at all. So Sean Mannion had a cupcake of a pass to just dump off to Irv Smith Jr. Come on, rewatch that tape again. Rewatch that play again. He was so wide open, Irv Smith Jr. was, that my dog could have farted that pass to Irv Smith Jr. Oh, Sean Mannion. I'm excited to see all that experience and all that valuable practice and all that stuff not mean a damn thing on the football field against the Buffalo Bills. Next, going on to the defense, there's really only one thing that I'm looking forward to, and that's the defensive line, the reserve defensive linemen. Specifically, I want to see more of Jalen Holmes, Odenigbo. It's funny because I got crucified a little bit in that last video. I think it was last week when I pronounced Efeadi Odenigbo. I'm going to struggle with that name. Sorry about that. But on the broadcast against the Cardinals on, Saturday that game was, his name got pronounced like 2 or 3 different ways, so I'm going to get used to it. But Odenigbo, we know how good he is. We've seen enough of him. I want to see more of Jalen Holmes. But also, Hercules Mataafa, man, I'm so impressed with this guy's performance and his strength because he looks like he doesn't belong on the field as a defensive tackle. He looks like he really doesn't because of his size. He looks like he's built as a linebacker, but he pushes dudes back. And we're talking about guards and centers, and he pushes those dudes back. He's so strong. I'm so impressed. It sucks that we had to wait a whole year to really see this guy in action, but he's looked damn good the limited time that he's got. So I'm excited to see him. And lastly, going into special teams, I talked about how the kicking show of Kari Vedvik is done. We can cancel that. That doesn't mean we should just automatically assume that he's going to be waived and cut from the team, because if you remember the game before last against the Seattle Seahawks, he was phenomenal in punting the ball. Now with kicking is a lot more pressure. You got to be a lot more focused and all that because you got to really hit it between the goalposts. With that said, if you're a little bit clumsy and stuff, he has a big leg. So if you're a little bit clumsy, you can kind of luck up and get really good ball placement when it comes to punting the ball. Against the Seahawks, he had very, very excellent ball placement on his punt. So I want to see him again against the Buffalo Bills, but as a punter. When it comes to field goal kicking and extra points, nah, man, you're done. We don't need to see that again. But against punting, when it comes to punting, I want to see that again. So don't just ignore this game, folks. The Buffalo Bills versus the Minnesota Vikings. This is still a good game to look forward to if you're a Vikings fan. We do this 3 times a week. Mediokr, Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. Catch my personal YouTube channel, Realistic Randy. I'll react to the game, Buffalo Bills, Minnesota Vikings. The reaction to that game will be on Friday on my channel, Realistic Randy, at realistic_Randy. We'll see you then.